Broadcasting. All Noise Radio is an internet radio station that's fully produced by graduates of the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. From modern rock to old school hip-hop, country to classical, news, talk, sports, and more. It's the noise you can't ignore. Log on to allnoiseradio.com. Fire up the station. Find out more about your favorite jocks. Get the latest CSB news and more. Plus, you can take All Noise Radio with you on the go for free. Just download the Live 365 app to your iPhone, iPod Touch, or BlackBerry and search All Noise Radio. Check out some of those broadcasters today at allnoiseradio.com. Powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Sit back down and shut your trap. It's time for
Keeping it sports with them three, right here on All Noise Radio.
Are you ready?
Well, I'll need some beer.
You have to ask me nicely.
Come on now, don't be bashful.
Plays for the best sports talk and news surrounding each league.
I can prove it with my usual flawless logic. Hey man, get better, go do it my way.
What's your name again?
And now, here's your host, M3, Mike Rosansky.
Coming to you from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. It's time for Keeping It Sports with M3, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everything's going well for you here on this Monday, the 5th day of August. Quite frankly, my favorite month of the year for, personal, selfish reasons, whether that be what comes up at the end of this month, a very important day in everyone's lives, and life wouldn't be the same without this day, or the fact that we get closer to the start of the NFL season, we get away from the god-awful preseason games, there's that. You inch closer and closer toward the Major League Baseball postseason that in some ways the picture has been made a little clearer in the last week, and in some ways it's been made a little bit muggier in the last week. And I'll get to all the happenings of what went on with the Major League Baseball trade deadline in a little bit. But it's funny how life can go sometimes. It's funny how things can change so quickly. It's funny how, in just the span of 1 week, so much can change. Because I can tell you, going back maybe even a little further, going back 8 days ago at this time, the Yankees had just lost the first 3 games of their 4-game series up in Boston against the Red Sox, and I started to sense a little bit of panic out of my fellow Yankee fans because the lead in the American League East had been cut from 11.5 to 8.5. The Red Sox won 3 in a row. The Yankees starting pitching was in shambles. Oh my God, so one of the worst stretches we've ever seen by a starting rotation. Cashman's got to make trades. Now, got to fire the pitching coach, which they should have done anyway. There's got to be changes. The boss, if he was still here, wouldn't stand for this. And it's funny how now, just 8 days later, so much of that narrative has changed. I mean, you want to look back to that series in Boston. I mentioned last week how important that win was on Sunday Night Baseball. Not just because Herman was able to bounce back from his bad start before that, but because it was able to calm things down. Yeah, the Red Sox gained 2 games on the Yankees, but it could have been a whole lot worse. There wasn't the 4-game swing that it could have possibly been. And let's look at how it's completely changed since, because starting with that game, the Boston Red Sox have not won a game in over a week. They're on an 8-game losing streak after the happenings of this weekend when they came to the Bronx and lost all 4 games in a 4-game, 3-day set, including getting swept in Saturday's day-night doubleheader. And you look at this weekend, the Yankees beat them in every way possible. You look at Friday night, where you're hoping for a big start out of James Paxton. You're looking at him saying this guy has to be a big player for them going down the stretch due to the fact that they did not make any moves at the trade deadline. He needs to be the guy that many expected him to be when traded here, and that's a guy with big-time stuff that has not filled up that potential, but the Yankees are finally going to crack the code there and get the best out of James Paxton. And you got the best out of James Paxton, at least for Friday night, because early on it looked like same old thing. James Paxton gives up 2-run homer to J.D. Martinez in the first inning. But he was calmed down after that with the Gleyber Torres grand slam in the bottom of the first. A first inning that it seemed like at one point Eduardo Rodriguez was not going to get out of. And, Paxton just went out there after that and shut things down for 6 innings. Strong performance by the bullpen for the last 3. And you win a nice pitch to 4-2 ball game there. You get to Saturday, and, whenever you go into a day and you're looking at a day-night doubleheader, you're saying, all right, at least let me get one. At least let me get one here, and we'll worry about everything else after that. Well, to hell with winning one. The Yankees sweep the doubleheader. And you look at the fact that Herman has a second very good start in a row, ties the Major League lead in wins with 14 wins on the season. Add on to that the fact that they beat the crap out of Chris Sale. Yes, was the umpiring awful throughout that game? I can't deny it. Hell, all across the league this year, I think the umpiring, especially when it comes to home plate and the strike zone, has been at best questionable. But Chris Sale, can you go out there and get somebody out instead of sitting there and whining, crying, complaining to the home plate umpire the whole time? And first, your manager goes out there and gets thrown out for you. And then as you're being taken out in the middle of the 4th inning after getting shellacked, you get tossed out of the game. But hey, I guess Chris Sale should be used to getting shellacked by now, because you look at the season that this guy has had. 5-11, an over 4.5 ERA. Even worse, he's 0-4 against the Yankees with a 9 ERA. And for him, on a day where your team's playing 2 games, to not go 4 innings, set up in a bad mood for the Red Sox for the rest of the day. I mean, the best part about Herman's performance is the fact that he was able to go 7 innings. You only had to use 1 reliever out of the pen. After that, it left you, with a full bullpen, knowing that you're going with the opener gimmick in the nightcap. And I'll continue to say I am against it. I'll continue to refer to it as a gimmick until further notice. But hey, the Yankees are perfecting it this year. 9-0 in games where they go with the combination of Chad Green and Nestor Cortez. And it's not something that if I were running a baseball team I would do, but you can't complain about the results. I'm not sure what was better as a Yankee fan. If you're sitting there watching it at your home on your couch like I was, watching them sweep the day-night doubleheader, or the fact that for 2 games on Yes Network, you got the Hall of Famer Bob Costas calling the game. And you heard some incredible, funny stories about when he was younger and coming up in the business, some of the legendary figures he got to meet along his broadcasting career. A little, something to change things up rather than Ryan Rucco, who's done a solid job filling in for Michael Kay with his voice issues. But I digress on that. But now, last night I had the worry going into the series finale that it's hard to sweep a 4-game series. The Red Sox probably do just like the Yankees were due last week. But then you see it's the Yankees' good old friend David Price on the mound, and any and all worries went out of your system, especially when you look at his career as a Boston Red Sox. I mean, when you're a Red Sox, your main goal is not just to win a championship, it's to have success against the Yankees. Just like when you're a Yankee, your main goal is, other than winning a championship, is success against the Red Sox. You're judged based on what you do against your bitter rival. Well, since David Price donned a Boston Red Sox jersey in 8 games at Yankee Stadium, he's gotten lit up like a Christmas tree. I mean, what is his ERA 9 now? And it just further extended what has been a miserable week and a half for the Boston Red Sox. And let's face it, they couldn't get enough misery. I mean, believe me, I don't wish injuries on anyone, especially if I did. This year would be the karma for that, considering everything the Yankees have gone through on the injury front. But with what that city has had to celebrate over the last 19 years, I think they can go through a bad year, a rough patch every once in a while. I mean, they lost the Stanley Cup. The Red Sox, the way they're playing right now, look like they're going to miss the postseason, especially being on an 8-game losing streak. Their starting rotation has an ERA of 10 during that losing streak, and they did not make any incremental changes, especially to the biggest weakness on their team. I mean, you look at Sale, Porcello, and David Price. They have not pitched up to what you expect them to be this year, especially with what Sale and Price are getting paid. And Porcello, worst year to have a down year, especially on a contract year. Their lineup, it's still loaded. You look at, there's no left side of the infield that's having a better offensive year combined than what Bogarts and Devers are having. Betts got off to a slow start, but it started to come on, although he went 2 for 15 during the course of this weekend. Did love seeing the fact that Benintendi went 0-4 on the doubleheader on Saturday. But the biggest problem with the Boston Red Sox is that bullpen. It's so bad that they had to stick Nathan Eovaldi out there, who they paid $17 million a year to be one of their starters during free agency last year. You look across the board in that pen, and Brazier, who was a godsend for them last year, has been sent to AAA. Matt Barnes, I mentioned this earlier with Rodriguez being lucky to get out of the first inning alive on Friday night. Barnes was lucky to get out alive on Saturday night in the second half of the doubleheader. I mean, he's walked in the ballpark left and right and couldn't find the strike zone even if he was handed a GPS. So, now I know there's still, 50-plus games to go in this season. For the Red Sox, you look at them, they played 114 games, so they're got 48 games left to go this season. But after getting swept in the fashion that they did this weekend, being pushed now to 6.5 games back of the Rays for the second wild card, 7 games behind them in the loss column, and the fact that you can't add any reinforcement during the month of August. That waiver trade deadline that they used to have at August 31st doesn't exist anymore. It's very fair to question right here, right now, what the Red Sox are actually going to make the postseason, because this is the roster they got. It's not like with the Yankees where there's reinforcements on the way. It's not like with the Yankees where you got Giancarlo Stanton on the IL and you expect him back hopefully at some point. Or you got Luis Severino and Dylan Betances. You're crossing your fingers that you can get those guys back healthy and ready for the postseason. Or you're hopeful that you get back Encarnacion, who fractured his right wrist on Saturday when hit by a pitch in the 8th inning. Or hopeful that you get Aaron Hicks back. And let's face it, the Yankees got a big break there with the injury that he sustained on Saturday night. And there were rumors floating around that he might have to have Tommy John surgery, that it was something to do with the UCL ligament in his elbow. As it would turn out, it's just a right flexor strain in the elbow, so you hope that he's back at some point in early September. But at least with the Yankees, there's potential help on the way. The Red Sox, they don't have that. Who out there do they have that could be either knight in shining armor? I mean, Dustin Pedroia is essentially retired at this point. Steve Pearce, haven't heard anything from him in a while. This is pretty much the roster they are going to have to go with for right now. So, I went into this weekend and I said it was imperative in my mind for the Red Sox to at least get 2 games here, and to get swept like that in the fashion that they did. The fact that the Yankees either were coming back from whatever leads the Red Sox would build or bludgeoning them. It's very fair right now to question whether they're going to make the postseason in the American League, even with the 2 wild cards. Because you look at right now, the Oakland A's are ahead of them. There's 6 up on them, 7 in the loss column, just outside of a wild card spot. They've won 3 in a row. Start a series with the Cubs tonight. The Rays have won 6 in a row and can't gain any traction on the Yankees in the American League East. Their best bet is now probably to make the wild card and play whoever doesn't win the Central between Cleveland and Minnesota. So, the Red Sox, it's a bad spot them being helped. Even their own general manager, Dave Dombrowski, essentially threw up the white flag last week when asked about, why did they make any trades at the trade deadline, saying that with how far back they are in the division, it didn't warrant giving up any prospects, any big prospects, to make moves for your bullpen. When your own GM is saying that kind of shows you what kind of season you're having. But if you're a Yankee fan right now, you're happy. It shows what a difference a week can be. The team's on a 5-game winning streak, playing good baseball against their division rival, putting them almost completely in their rearview mirror. I mean, they're 16 games ahead of them in the loss column, 14 and a half overall. And now you look at the schedule that they have coming up. It's time to fatten up here. It's time to beef up your record, especially when it comes to trying to get the best record overall in the American League. You look at what they have coming up here. Their next 11 games are against the Orioles and the Blue Jays. I mean, if that doesn't scream at minimum 8-3. I don't know what does. I mean, especially with the fact that you're 10-2 against the Baltimore Orioles this year. Unfortunately, this is the last time the Yankees are going to get to see the Orioles this year. And even with the weakened state that their roster's in, with losing Hicks for who knows how long, losing Encarnacion who knows how long, we'll see what kind of time frame we're looking at with Gleyber Torres, him leaving and having to go to the hospital last night with the core injury. I know his father tweeted out last night in Spanish saying that Gleyber's all right and he's on the team bus, but who knows, maybe they have him sit out the next couple nights. I don't know. He's got to be chomping at the bit seeing that Orioles jersey. Right now, if you're the Yankees, it's dress rehearsal time. You're trying to figure out who, along with Masahiro Tanaka, is going to be in the rotation for the postseason. You're trying to get your guys healthy. Especially in the cases of Severino and Betances, you got to see how much they can build up Luis Severino. My goal all along has been by September 1st, you hope that he can throw 40 pitches in a game. If they can get to that point, if you can get to the point where on September 1st, Luis Severino can throw 40 pitches in a game, then you activate him, you bring him here, you stretch him out in the month of September. I'd hope you can get him to, a pitch count in the mid-80s by the time October rolls around there. Because, as we know, short leash in the postseason with the days off, you're going to have most of your guys ready, available out of the bullpen. It's become a bullpen game in the postseason. As important as I still believe having that top of the rotation, upper echelon ace guy is, the bullpen, with how we've seen these teams manage the postseason the last couple of years, has become either as important or maybe even more important at times. Now, I know there's a lot of Yankee fans that are disappointed that they didn't make any trades. I will give you some thoughts on that, on where I sit with their inactivity at the trade deadline, as well as look around at some of the other moves that have been made at the deadline, look at the winners, losers, question what some teams were doing, give you some thoughts on the Mets, who saw this coming with what the Mets are doing right now, as well as mixing some football and maybe some NBA along the way. So for this Monday afternoon, sit back, relax, whatever you may be doing, and continue keeping it sports with M3.
Shouldn't we be doing something we love? Call Connecticut School of Broadcasting at 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to GoCSB.com. Since 1964, Connecticut School of Broadcasting, with a network of 12 campuses from Massachusetts to Miami, has helped place thousands of grads as DJs, sportscasters, entertainment reporters, behind the scenes in audio and video production, every aspect of the broadcast media. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has trained men and women of all ages and backgrounds in a matter of months, not years. Learn by doing from area radio and TV pros. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to GoCSB.com. Remember, it's never too late to love what you do. Day and evening classes begin soon. Get trained. Get connected now.
Welcome back to Keeping It Sports with M3. Glad you all be listening to the podcast this week. Remember, there's ways to become involved in the podcast through Facebook and Twitter. Facebook, of course, where you find the podcast each and every single week. Facebook.com/Keeping It Sports with M3. And as I tell you each and every single week at this time, a little cheap plug, a little cheap promotion here. Tell your friends about it. Tell them where they can find this podcast each and every single week. If they feel like listening to someone rant, rave, go off, explode about things going on in sports, give their uncensored opinion about things going on in the sports world, check it out, as well as you can watch it live through Facebook or watch it on our YouTube channel, Keeping It Sports with M3 on YouTube. You can also follow the program, send me any questions, comments, thoughts, opinions through Twitter at Keeping It Sports. Still wish that they would allow me more than 15 characters in the name, but that's their problem. At Keeping It Sports is the official Twitter account of Keeping Sports with M3. Go there, send me questions, comments, thoughts, opinions. You have anything going on in the world of sports, and I'll be sure to get to that at some point. Now, I mentioned before about the Major League Baseball trade deadline. And I also mentioned about how your perspective on things can change in the matter of days, in just such a short span. And I gotta admit, about 5 days ago at this time, or Wednesday afternoon, I was disappointed that the Yankees didn't make any changes to their roster, due to the fact that we all hope that Dylan Betances and Luis Severino come back, but with the setbacks they've had to their injuries, you can't count on them. It's not like, they started the season, they were pitching well, got hurt in May or June, and we're just waiting for them to come back. No, neither one of these guys has pitched in a game this year. Betances made some spring training appearances, but got put on the IL a week before the start of the regular season. And Severino got hurt warming up for his first spring training start. So the Yankees have been without these guys amongst many other players that have been on and off the IL throughout this season. So I was hopeful that they make a trade for a starting pitcher. Problem is, there weren't those guys out there. You heard the talk about Robbie Ray, Mike Minor, heard the talk about Tanner Roark. Also, the Mets pitchers were brought up. Would it be Zach Wheeler or Noah Syndergaard? Problem is, I don't look at any of those guys as true difference makers, true guys that are going to put me over the top. Cashman's track record at the trade deadline has been always trading for those third or more likely fourth starter types, whether it be, you want to look at 2005 with Sean Chacon and Aaron Small, who came out of nowhere, or you talk about them getting Corey Lytle, God rest his soul. You talk about Jeff Weaver, Danny Nagel, Sonny Gray. There's Jay Happ just last year. It's been a bunch of these guys. There hasn't been that trade for that big front of the rotation ace since the 95 trade deadline, when they acquired David Cohen, and he would go on to play an important factor in their dynasty in the late 90s into 2000. So, all of those guys, because you look at the Mets weren't trading either of their pitchers to the Yankees, no matter what the Yankees were going to offer. I know people talk about the Yankee premium that they would have had to offer. Even if they did offer that, say offer a kid like Garcia or one of their other young pitchers or Cliff Frazier, they still weren't going to be available to them. And you look at some of these other pitchers that were available, the asking prices were ridiculous. I mean, Toronto, before they traded Marcus Stroman, they at one point were asking for Clint Frazier and Davy Garcia. the Detroit Tigers, the unmitigated goal of this team for Matthew Boyd, who's having a nice year, a nice breakout year for them. They were asking for Gleyber Torres. Are you kidding me? A 22-year-old position player who plays gold glove caliber defense at both second and shortstop, has been an all-star each of the first 2 years of his career. For a left-handed starting pitcher who's in his late 20s and is only figuring it out now, I'll pass. You saw that the ridiculous asking price that the Diamondbacks were asking from the Yankees for Robbie Ray, wanting Clint Frazier and not just one other, but 3 other prospects. It was just ridiculous. After hearing all that, I was kind of glad that Cashman didn't make a move, because I've always been on the side of not making a move just for the sake of making a move. If you get what I'm saying there, not trading away something just to get something. The only true difference makers that were out there were Trevor Bauer and Madison Bumgarner. And I still wonder, after the last couple weeks with how the Giants played in the month of July, the fact that they went on a stretch of going 19-5 at one point, how available Bumgarner actually was. And in the case of Bauer, I can't blame the Indians for not trading him to the Yankees, because I've said all along, they're going to come back and win the American League Central, go past the Twins. You really think that they want to see Bauer in the postseason pitching against them? I think not. So while it's disappointing, it sucks that they weren't able to make any moves, I'll tell you that here's the one thing I will say. The Yankees have a lot of pitching prospects that need to be added to their 40-man roster this coming offseason. They have 4 in particular. One of them, a lot of you probably have heard of, this kid Davy Garcia, the 20-year-old that's pitching at AAA. 3 others, 2 of them down single A. 1 of them is in AA on a rehab assignment right now. Unfortunately, because the Yankees are who they are, not all 4 of them are going to pitch for the Yankees. Hell, not all 4 of them are probably going to remain starting pitchers. And life doesn't work out perfectly like that. So at some point, you got to be willing to push your chips to the middle of the table and make that big trade, make that gamble. And the time to do that was probably a month ago, before the Giants got on this run, when they were still 12 games under 500 and further back in the National League wildcard race. Right now, they're 2.5 games back. A month ago, they were probably, 9 games back, and it was thought that they were a guarantee to be sellers. So that was the time, if you were going to trade for Bumgarner, to push some of these chips to the middle of the table. The other thing that is becoming clearly apparent here, I don't care what they say, how many different ways they want to phrase it, they hate Clint Frazier. Why else would they not bring him up now? Unless they're trying to push back his service time and push back his free agent clock 1 year, how has he not been brought up? And you look at Stanton's on IL, and Canaccion's on the IL. You could play Judge at DH. You're going with an outfield right now of Cameron Maybin, Brett Gardner, and Mike Tauchman, who, Tauchman and Maybin have had, nice years for the Yankees, especially Tauchman, who's on a nice little run right now. But at some point, doesn't that, wear out? These guys who are just, journeyman type players, at some point, doesn't that catch up to you? You've seen what Clint Frazier can do offensively in the big leagues. I get it. His defense needs to improve. But I've seen through social media, he's out there every day before games. People who cover the team say that during batting practice, he's out there working on his defense. He's working with a coach, doing drills to get better. So, I mean, if you weren't going to trade him, why the hell is he still in the minor leagues? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. But, no, deadline came and went. Disappointed if you're a Yankee fan, but, no, what could you expect? There really was not much out there to hope for. Now, if you're a Met fan, you got to be pinching yourself right now. And I have to be honest with you, as I am, or at least try to be every week. I did not see this run that the New York Mets have been on recently coming. I did not see this stretch that or the way they've been playing since the All-Star break coming. The fact that they've gone 15-6 since the break, have gone to within one game of 500. They are now only, three back of the second wild card of the Philadelphia Phillies. They've now won 9 of their last 10. Now, let's face it, some of that has been against the dregs of the Major League Baseball. When you look at the fact that in the last 2 weeks, you've been playing the likes of the Pirates and the White Sox, that's going to help you out a little bit. That's going to give you a shot in the arm a little bit here, especially coming out of the All-Star break and playing 3 games against, of all teams, the Miami Marlins. But hey, if you want to be a good team, you got to beat teams that are on your schedule. Hell, they even went to Minnesota and swept the 2-game series there. I thought, after that little streak there, when they lost 3 out of 4 in San Francisco to the Giants, maybe this is their come back down to earth moment. But they've continued to play well, continued to withstand some of the issues that have been going against them, whether it be losing Dom Smith to a foot injury, Robinson Cano, outside of that 3-homer game he had about 2 weeks ago, has essentially done nothing this year. Let's face it, it's either age or the lack of PEDs are catching up to him. You look at the bullpen, which has been one of their biggest problems, has actually been kind of a strength in recent weeks. Gazelman pitching better. They're even getting some scoreless outings out of Jeurys Familia. Lugo was the reliever of the month in the month of July. The big problem there continues to be the man at the end of the game. Does Edwin Diaz think that he has to give up a run every outing? Seriously, he gets brought into a 4-run game on Saturday night, thinking, all right, not a save situation, but he hasn't pitched in a couple days. Give him a little bit of work here. And what do you know? He decides to make the game interesting by giving up a 2-run homer in the 9th inning to Starling Marte. And at some point, you just got to throw your hands up if you're Mickey Callaway, if you're the Mets, and be like, all right, this is not working this year. We got to move this guy out of the bullpen, out of the closer role, and go with Seth Lugo. Because Lugo, he had that little hiccup in Chicago about 2 months ago. But other than that, he's been nails for this team. He's been by far your best reliever, and has shown recently on a couple occasions he can pitch on back-to-back days, something that had long been a concern for the Mets when it comes to Seth Lugo. And what hasn't been a concern as of recently, the starting rotation pitching better. DeGrom is starting to look more like his Cy Young DeGrom rather than the guy that was struggling in the month of May. Noah Syndergaard, the last 5 starts, has an ERA around 2. Zach Wheeler is pitching well. Maybe some of that is due to the fact that he's on a contract year here. Got to give some credit to Phil Reagan, the pitching coach for the Mets. My only problem with Phil Reagan was not that he was 80. If you remember when this happened, when they made the move and it looked like they were making Dave Island the scapegoat, my only problem with making Phil Reagan your pitching coach was not his age. It was never that. It was the fact that this guy had not been a pitching coach or coaching Major League Baseball in 20 years. He had just been working throughout the minor league systems and thought that maybe he had been away from the big leagues too long to be able to get through to today's generation. But he's proven me wrong, other than in the case of Steven Matz. Steven Matz, what a joke this guy is. The fact that a week ago, everyone's like, oh, look at Matz going out there throwing a complete game shutout against the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then on Friday night, he can't even get through the 4th inning. After 3 scoreless innings, he just gets shellacked, giving up run after run, extra base hit to some of these no-name guys, especially giving up a 2-run double to Melky Cabrera, who before this weekend, I didn't even know he was still in the major leagues. And Steven Matz, I know some people out there want to refer to the Mets rotation as the Flushing 5, but just throw Steven Matz, flush him down the toilet, because he's been nothing but hot garbage for this team all year long. And you can't, everyone talked about this kid's toughness coming out of the minor leagues, but I understand injuries happen, but mental toughness, you see too many of this deer in the headlights look from Matz, where he doesn't know how to stop the bleeding at all. And, the Mets kind of surprised me last week. I brought this up a lot last week. This was a big theme about the trade for Marcus Stroman. But maybe that set a fire under this team. Maybe the front office, I hate to give them credit because Brody Van Wagenen has done some and said some very goofy things this year, but maybe they thought to themselves, hey, this team's better than the way it's performed. Now, do I think that they're going to be able to continue this run and make a surge all the way to the National League wildcard spot? No, I don't. Because I look at some of these other teams that they have to chase down. The Phillies, I don't know really what to think of the Phillies. 1 week they're up, 1 week they're down. Hell, last week they played an extra inning game that went so long that they're putting one of their starting pitchers in the outfield. You look at some of the other teams that they're going up against. The Brewers, who have been, outside of Yelich, there's nothing that you look at the Brewers and say that really stands out. Even, Hader hasn't been the Josh Hader of what we saw last year, this year. They're on a 4-game losing streak. But other than that, I expect both the Cardinals and the Cubs to make it out of the National League. One win the division, one be a wild card. Even with as poor as the Cubs have played on the road recently, losing 9 out of the last 10 road series. And the Washington Nationals, their rotation to me at the top has been more consistent than the Mets rotation so far. And their lineup, they don't have that glaring black hole there with either Cano, his performance this year, or the slump that Pete Alonso has been on in the second half, batting only $150, only has 3 or 4 home runs. The home runs are what is keeping you from saying that the home run derby did him in here, but he's greatly slowed down here since the Midsummer Classic. So the Mets, it's good to see them relevant. Good, it's better than flipping on every New York radio show or flipping on SMY or MLB Network and hearing Met fans cry and complain and whine and watching them just be a disaster. But the schedule is going to get tougher from here, people. They start a 4-game series in just about a half hour with this doubleheader they got going on with the Marlins tonight before 2 more over the next couple of days. But you still got games coming up with Washington. Still got games coming up in Atlanta. So there are going to be tougher games. You're not just going to get to coast on facing the Pirates, White Sox, and Marlins for the rest of the year. I've always believed in the Bill Parcells line. You are what your record says you are. And I'm not sure when it comes to the Mets, are they what they were the first, 101 games of this season? Or are they what they've been the last 10 games? So they need to show me more than just a 10-game stretch here in which they go 9-1 to prove that they're going to be in this for the rest of the season rather than just some little cute hot streak. Gonna take a break here, come back on the other side and give you some more thoughts on what went on with Major League Baseball's trade deadline, look at some winners, losers, and question what some teams were doing. Continue keeping it sports with M3.
It's been 48 years Connecticut School of Broadcasting has helped place thousands of people, just like you, in exciting careers in radio, television, and the new media. At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, our hands-on approach is different. It's designed to have you spend less time in the classroom and more time in the studios. From the first day, you'll work with state-of-the-art equipment. Learn by doing from our team of industry professionals who come from their studios to ours. The best part about it, you'll learn it all in a matter of months, not years. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has a network of 12 campuses from Massachusetts to Miami. Remember, it's never too late to love what you do. So do what I did. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO. Step into the fast-paced world of the broadcast media. Day and evening classes begin soon. Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Get trained and get connected now. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to gocsb.com.
Now, I'm sure by now, most of you have either heard of or definitely gotten to see the video of what happened last Tuesday night in Cincinnati, Ohio, of the widely talked about brawl between the Pittsburgh Pirates and Cincinnati Reds. And let's face it, this was bound to happen eventually. These two teams have not just had a hatred toward each other this year, but this goes back several years. You want to, change managers on the Reds, change the players outside of Votto, all you want. The Pirates and Reds, seemingly for the last 5 or 6 years now, have had this simmering beef between the two of them, no matter who is on either one of these rosters. And the Reds have felt like they've gotten the raw end of the deal of things here, accusing some of the Pirate pitchers of throwing above at their hitters, above the shoulders. How you saw benches clearing incident between them back in April, and at that time I was saying to myself, oh, this is just the tip of the iceberg here. This is going to get worse. And it finally got worse the last Tuesday night when Amir Garrett, and you got to love a guy who will do this. Amir Garrett had just gotten over giving up a 2-run homer. It's 11-3 Pirates. Garrett calls out his acting manager, because remember, David Bell, the manager of the Reds, had been thrown out in the 7th inning or coming out to argue about Keona Kela first throwing at Derek Dietrich's head and then arguing the strike zone that the home plate umpire had for Yasiel Puig. Well, Amir Garrett had enough. He hands the ball to the acting manager and takes off toward the Pirates' dugout, throwing a Roman Reigns-like Superman punch at whoever he could hopefully hit. I think he was aiming for Pirates reliever Crick, if I've got his name correctly here. But he just dives at about 4 guys, throwing a wild left-hand hook. And from there, it was just a melee. I mean, David Bell comes charging back out from the Reds clubhouse, is pushing Clint Hurdle. You have, Yasiel Puig first going nuts toward the Pittsburgh Pirates, and then at his own teammates for not being more willing to fight. And here's the funny thing about this whole incident. Moments before this brawl had happened, the Reds had agreed to a trade, a 3-way deal with the Pirates and the Indians to send Yasiel Puig to Cleveland. You tell me that Mike Chernoff and the Indians front office, as they're completing this deal, they're not looking at this and being like, what the hell are we acquiring here? We just traded one nut job in Trevor Bauer, and now we're bringing in this lunatic. And Puig shouldn't have even been on the field. And here's the real question with Major League Baseball. How the hell did they let David Bell manage the next day? How did they let him come out and back out and manage his squad? He should have been suspended for that game until the full punishments are handed down. He's not represented by any managers union or the CBA saying they got to go through due process. Really a weird spot there, but they finally came down with the suspensions. I think it was late Thursday. Bell got 6 games. Hurdle got 2 games. Amir Garrett surprisingly only got 8 games, while Keona Kella got 10 games. And I guess maybe some of this they're accounting past discretions here on incidents that have gone on between these two teams over the course of this year. But wow, just a wild scene there in Cincinnati, especially when you take everything into account. The manager getting thrown out and coming back into the game. Garrett charging at the opposing team's dugout. I mean, we've seen hitters charge the pitcher. We've seen pitchers charge a hitter. I've seen players come out of each respective dugout, come at each other multiple times during the game. But I don't think I've ever seen a pitcher charge the opposing team's dugout. And one of the players on the field shouldn't have even been there. He was traded moments before it. Just a chaotic scene, and something I'm sure that ESPN and MLB Network are going to play on loop, play to death repeatedly over the years to come. Now, I mentioned Puig getting traded. He was part of a 3-team deal with the Padres and the Indians, a deal that's sent him, amongst other players, to the Indians, sent Trevor Bauer to the Cincinnati Reds, and sent the Reds' number 3 prospect, Taylor Trammell, to the San Diego Padres. You look at this, on the surface you question, why are the Indians trading one of their best pitchers, and they're on the precipice of a playoff spot. But when you're in a market like Cleveland, you can't keep everybody forever. And Bauer is set to be making $20 million in arbitration in his final year of arbitration. Plus, I think they just got sick of his shenanigans, especially when he threw the ball over center field last week. So they get back a package of Puig, who's set to be a free agent. They bring in Franmil Reyes, who has 20 home runs with the Padres. also bring in a young pitcher in Logan Allen. So they've set themselves up pretty good for right now and in the future. And in the Reds, they're in all likelihood not going to make a run back to contention in the National League wild card race this year. You look at them right now. They are what, 6 games back of the second wild card, if I've got the standings correctly. Let's see. They are They are 5.5 games. Excuse me. They are 5 games back in the loss column. So there's still a shot for them, but they've been so inconsistent this year, and I've always believed in the thought that you can't talk about anybody as a contender until they're either at or above the 500 mark, and they're 6 games under 500, so call me when they have a winning record. But now you add Trevor Bauer, who you got under control through next year, Luis Castillo, who's been a breakout pitcher in the bigs this year, Sonny Gray, who's been a revelation for them, shows you what happens when you get away from Larry Rothschild. This team could make some noise next year if they get the right offensive pieces that get some of their kids to step up and fill some of those gaps that they have in their lineup. Now, you look at the deadline in a whole. Of course, we always want to judge who's a winner and who's a loser. And I broke this actually down to 3 categories: winners, losers, and questionable. I had listed as a questionable the Mets, but they might be looking like winners so far in this deadline due to the fact they didn't trade either Wheeler or Syndergaard. They bring in Stroman, who struggled on Saturday night thanks to some shoddy home plate umpiring, but you expect he's going to pitch pretty well for them. And, outside of, they have a couple issues that need to be addressed: the closer role and what's Robinson Cano's role on this team going forward. But they've started to pick up their performance, so you might be able to push them into the winner category. Questionable is also the Reds, just due to the fact that I don't think they're going to be in the thick of things when it comes to the wild card race. They're probably, here's what the Reds are going to do. I'll tell you right now. They're just going to borderline it for the rest of the year. They're going to come no closer than what they are right now. They'll dance between 5 and 6 games back of the National League wild card for the last 50 or so games of this season, but never give you that real feel that they're actually in it, that they're a true, legitimate threat to make the postseason in the National League. Now, of course, the winners of the deadline, you look at Cleveland Indians, the fact that, yes, they trade away Trevor Bauer, but they get some workable pieces in Allen and Reyes for the future, as well as Puig for the here and now, who you got to figure is going to be on his best behavior and give his best performance for them, due to the fact that he's a free agent this coming off season. The A's make 2 trades, add Jake Diekman to their bullpen, a nice left-hander, and add Tanner Roark from the Cincinnati Reds to that starting rotation there. So, and right now the A's, they're only a half game back of the second wild card. They are right there in the mix of things. They got a series started tonight against the Cubs. See how that goes for them. But the A's. What's funny is that you look at them on paper, and yeah, you have Chapman at third base. You have Chris Davis as your DH-less corner outfielder. They go with sometimes the opener gimmick there. There's not a lot that stands out to you about the A's, but they do nothing but win. These last 2 years, what they've been able to put together with seemingly a land of misfit toys there is pretty incredible. Now, the one reason that why I can't completely just bow to their general manager Billy Beane as well as their manager is because what does it ever lead them to doing? They make the playoffs, but they never make any noise in the American League playoffs. So for now, we have them labeled as a winner at the trade deadline. We'll see where that leads them. The National League East was very active at the deadline as far as moves being made when it came to the bullpen. You look at with both the Nationals and Braves adding 3 relievers to their pen. The Braves went for more of the flashier names, more of the high-priced ticket items, getting Shane Green and Mark Melancon, 2 guys who have closing experience, while the Nationals were just looking to build up depth, looking at a scenario where it's like, hey, whatever we bring in can't be much worse than what we've already had. A bullpen that's been, for the most part, the worst pen in baseball across this year outside of closer Sean Doolittle. So they had Daniel Hudson from the Blue Jays and get 2 relievers, 1 lefty, 1 righty from the Mariners in Rinus Alias and Hunter Strickland, who talk about ironic there. Hunter Strickland, who, as we've seen, has had his explosions in the postseason, been a bit of a hothead, and most of those moments have been against the Washington Nationals. So I guess it's only fitting that he finally dons a Nationals jersey. The Rays acquired Eric Sogard, backup infielder, as well as the first base / DH Jesus Aguilar from the Brewers. What's funny there is they're not paying any of Aguilar's contract, but they're paying some of the contract of Edwin Encarnacion, who's never even played for them, who was involved in a 3-team deal during the offseason, in which they agreed to pick up some of the contract on it, and they're paying more of Encarnacion's contract playing for the Yankees than they are paying Jesus Aguilar's. Go figure on that. But of course, the biggest winner at the deadline has got to be the work of Jeff Luhnow, the Houston Astros general manager, to make the moves that he made, trading for Joe Biagini and Aaron Sanchez of the Toronto Blue Jays, and getting Zach Greinke from the Arizona Diamondbacks. And Zach Greinke, no one thought he was available. No, especially when on the deadline day, 3 hours before the deadline, he starts a game at Yankee Stadium. Hell, even as close to an hour before the deadline, he's still on the mound, pitching in the 5th inning for the Arizona Diamondbacks. They go into a rain delay in that game, and you find out, Greinke's been traded to the Houston Astros. And there weren't even any rumblings, any inkling that this guy could possibly be available. And the Astros trade for him without giving up their best prospect in Kyle Tucker. Got to give them a lot of credit. The fact that, I looked around deadline day, and there was not a lot of teams that were willing to push their chips in the middle of the table and go for it. I was glad the Yankees didn't make a trade just for the sake of making a trade, but they should have made their trade for a pitcher a month ago when Bumgarner was more available. The Red Sox didn't make a big push to add to their bullpen, and they saw reliever after reliever go off the board. Same with the Dodgers, who didn't trade one of their big prospects to go get Felipe Vasquez from the Pittsburgh Pirates, or go get Shane Green, get somebody to either set up Kenley Jansen or possibly push Jansen into the setup role with the struggles that Jansen has had dating back to last year's postseason. But the Astros said, to hell with it. We got a window here. We're going to try and win now. We're going to add to payroll if necessary. So they bring on Zach Greinke in the remaining 2.5 years of his contract. They trade for Sanchez and Joe Biagini, and what a surprise that their first act with the Astros is going out there and being part of a 4-pitcher combined no-hitter on Saturday night against the Seattle Mariners. And they do that without giving up Kyle Tucker, without giving up their best pitching prospect, without giving up the young kid, the Alvarez, that's come up and hit 13 home runs for them in the 39 games he's played so far. So I like that, showing guts to try and win a championship here, realizing that you're only going to have this window for so long before you got to start paying guys, and you may lose a player here or there to free agency due to the fact that they don't have the payroll level of, say, the likes of the Yankees or the Red Sox or even the Dodgers, where at some point they're going to have to let someone go. Well, they are paying right now Altuve and Bregman and Verlander. They may not be able to hold on to, say, either Garrett Cole or Springer or Correa for the long term. Or at some point, eventually down the road, if he continues on this pace, they're going to have to pay the kid Alvarez big bucks to remain there. So they're taking the chance, taking the opportunity, and have made themselves a clear favorite as far as front runner to win the World Series this year. And you're going to look at this deadline, two of the other favorites amongst them, the Dodgers and Yankees, as losers for not making the trade for a reliever in the case of the Dodgers, or if you're the Yankees, adding a starting pitcher. But just remember this: while the Astros had this glamorous trade deadline, they look like the favorites on paper right now. This star-studded starting rotation of Verlander, Cole, Greinke, Sanchez, if he's anything close to what he was on Saturday night going forward. Now, even with a 4-14 record on the season, remember this: we used to always talk about the Atlanta Braves and their star-studded rotation in the 90s that had 3 Hall of Famers on it: Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz. They won division title after division title, were in the playoffs every year. But what did that lead to? 1 championship. Even with all those pitchers at the same time at the top of their game, they only won 1 championship. They came fairly close in other years. Lost in 91. They lost in 96 and 99 to the Yankees. But they only won 1 title during that run. So even in more recent memory, you look at 8 years ago, the Philadelphia Phillies put together a rotation of Roy Halladay, put together with Cliff Lee, Cole Hamels, and Roy Oswalt. And what did they win? Nothing. Nada. Zilch. They didn't even go to a World Series together. So while all the moves that the Astros have done so far look very good on paper, and rightly so, they should be the favorites, it does not guarantee them a damn thing. Gonna take one last break here, come back, close things out, continue keeping it sports with M3.
Connecticut School of Broadcasting founder Dick Robinson.
You know, the media business has changed a lot since we opened our doors in 1964. Now media content is everywhere. On air, online, on the go. More than ever, companies are looking for people to help drive this new media.
At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll get
hands-on training on the latest software and equipment in a matter of months, not years. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has placed thousands of grads in broadcast media careers. It's all about versatility. You see, at a radio station, if you also know how to shoot, edit, and post videos, you become a pretty hot commodity. That's the training you get at Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Connecticut School of Broadcasting, with locations up and down the East Coast, from Massachusetts to Miami. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on at gocsb.com. Connecticut School of Broadcasting, the nation's oldest and largest group of broadcast media schools. Redefining training in radio, TV, and new media. Get trained. Get connected. 1-800-TV-RADIO.
Before I close things out for the day, a little breaking news here if you're watching the podcast live via Facebook. Mentioned earlier about the injury to Gleyber Torres earlier tonight. Well, or last night, excuse me. Well, as it would seem, he's okay because Bleacher Report is reporting that Gleyber Torres is in the lineup for the Yankees tonight and will play despite going to the hospital after last night's game. So that's a bit of a sigh of relief there if you are a Yankee fan. Now, going to get away from baseball here a little bit, close things out with a couple of things here. Number one, I saw Carmelo Anthony's interview on First Take the other morning on ESPN. And what it cried out to me is a reek of desperation here. The fact that, no one's talked about a lot about Carmelo Anthony in recent months, ever since the Rockets seemingly let him go last year. Remember, he was eventually traded away to the Chicago Bulls and never even put on a Bulls uniform, was cut before he even played there. And Carmelo, still being, 34, 35 years old, still feels he has something left in the tank, still something to provide a team in the NBA, and wanted to make teams aware of that. So what does he do? He goes on television and is interviewed by someone that he's comfortable being around, in Stephen A. Smith. And I can't blame Stephen A. for doing this interview because, hey, if a guy who's been a perennial all-star, 10-time all-star in the NBA says, hey, I'm wondering if you would be willing to do a sit-down interview with me, you're going to do that. And talk about everything that went on in Houston. Talk about what led to his departure. Talk about whether he'd be willing to accept a lesser role, whether it was near the end of his tenure with the Thunder or when he was with Houston, coming off the bench, leading a second unit. And what he still thinks he has left, his desire to play the game. The one thing I will agree with Carmelo Anthony on, as much as he did look like a guy in decline near the end of the time with the Thunder and with the Houston Rockets, this guy out there obviously still wants to play the game, showing the league that he's working out every day. You're going to tell me, with the fact that you have 30 teams in this league, 15 roster spots per team, that's 450 players in the league. You're going to tell me that there are, even at this late stage of his career, probably the back nine of his career, you're going to tell me there's 450 players better than Carmelo Anthony? That part I have to agree with him on. And that's a little bit ridiculous that he can't make anybody's 15-man roster. And in his case, probably some of it is him being a little bit picky, because he's not going to go and sign up with someone, say, like Sacramento, or sign on, even to go back with the Knicks, sign on with one of the dregs of the NBA. He's not just going to come back just for the sake of playing. No, he wants to come back and be a part of a team that can win a championship, because that's the only thing that remains on Carmelo Anthony's resume. He's been part of All-Star team after All-Star team. He's been on first team NBA teams, all NBA teams. He's won Olympic gold medals. He won a national championship in college. The glaring omission from his resume is winning a title. And even if he's got to back into it as a role player, I'm sure that's something he wants. So remains to be seen if someone gives him that opportunity, gives him that shot. I mean, the teams I look at right now as possibilities, as long as LA obviously will always be that option out there because of LeBron, because of Anthony Davis, and how I'm sure LeBron's campaigning for his boy. And I don't know what to expect out of the Thunder this year, so I don't know if I can put them in there as a team that he'd be interested in joining. But you look at maybe Toronto would be a team he could look into. I mean, he's not going to be able to replace Kawhi, but they're going to need to replace some of that scoring there. And could he lead that second unit there? What about a team like Indiana, or maybe Portland, or hey, who knows? Maybe for a year could he play for the Brooklyn Nets if he's willing to take a veteran minimum salary. He's going to look for a team where he can go in there and win. So I guess you could throw out any contender out there, and that's a possibility for him, as long as it doesn't have to be, in his mind, it doesn't have to be New York, LA, Miami, or bust. So that's what you're looking at, basically, if Carmelo Anthony wants to continue his playing career. Now, I mentioned Portland before. Made a very wise move last week, signing their guard CJ McCollum to a 3-year contract extension. He still had 2 years, $57 million left on the deal. Now extends this deal to a 5-year, $157 million deal. But no, why play around there with one of the pillars of your franchise? Why play around there with one of your stars, even letting them have a chance to get close to free agency during their prime? And you look at Portland. If there was ever a year for them to win a title, it's this year. Yeah, they lose Enes Kanter via free agency, and a lot of that was stupidity on their front office's part due to the fact that they gave Kanter a time frame on what they or when they wanted him to re-sign with them, make a decision on the contract they were offering him. But I've always described Portland like this, a lot the same way I describe Houston. Portland and Houston, to this generation, are what the Pacers and the Knicks were in the 90s, where they had star players, they were championship caliber teams, but they always ran into that roadblock of Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. And the same has applied with Portland and Houston these last 5 years. They have good teams that, especially in Portland's case, the last 3 years, you could say, wow, that team could come out of the West to win a title. But they always run into the roadblock of the Golden State Warriors. Right now, there's not that roadblock in the Western Conference. Vegas has listed the Lakers as the favorite for reasons I can't understand why. Because, look at that roster. Outside of LeBron, AD, and Kyle Kuzma, it's very bare at the very best. Right now, it's wide open there in the West. You could tell me any one of probably 6 teams could come out of the Western Conference and win that this year, and I believe you. Whether it be either of the LA teams, you want to talk about Utah, talk about Houston, Portland is in the mix there for sure. Can't rule out the Warriors, although I think this is going to be kind of a step back year for them. So if there was ever a time for Portland to get to the NBA Finals with there being no glaring favorite in the Western Conference, this is the year for them. I mean, yeah, the Warriors have been able to keep their crew together, keep their core together with re-signing Clay, which you expected. They add D'Angelo Russell, who they claim they didn't sign just to flip him. Even this week, they re-up with Draymond Green, who was set to be a free agent next summer. Now ups his contract with a 4-year, $100 million contract extension, and well-deserved, if you ask me. Maybe it shows how weird a person I am. Draymond Green's always been one of my favorite players. Love the way the guy plays, except for when he was, kicking guys in their manhood about 3 years ago during the postseason. But the guy is a triple-doubles machine, has been all NBA defense every year since 2013. Well-deserved contract extension from my man Dre. But now's the time for Portland. Now's the time for them to step up and get out of the Western Conference. There's no more excuses, no more, we ran into the Warriors, we can't beat them. No, there's no super teams in the Western Conference anymore. So, it's time for Portland to step up and do something there. Plus, Portland we don't look at as, a big market. I would love it if next year that we had a finals of Portland versus Milwaukee. It would drive the league absolutely crazy if we didn't have one of the big market franchises in the NBA Finals. Now, speaking of, contract extensions, we're still waiting to see if the Cowboys are ever going to get off their high horse and pay Zeke Elliott, which they should. He continues to vacate in Cabo while the rest of the team is at training camp. You did see one contract extension over the last week with the Saints giving Michael Thomas a 5-year, $100 million contract extension with $61 million guaranteed, now passing Odell Beckham for the highest paid wide receiver in the league. And if he's getting that, just imagine what Julio Jones is now asking the Atlanta Falcons for, the fact that he's 2 years away from free agency and he already wants a new contract on the boards there. Even with that extension, the last extension I needed to see come down over this weekend was a contract extension for Tom Brady. Can this ever end? Can Tom Brady ever just go away and let me enjoy the NFL for once? We get it. You dominated the AFC for almost 20 years now. You've dominated this division for every year other than the year that you tore your ACL. But do we really need more of Tom Brady? Is he that dead set on playing until he's 45 years old that he's got to sign another contract extension? When is the pain going to end? It's bad enough they've won 6 Super Bowls in the last 19 years. They've won the division all but 2 years in the last 19 years, those 2 being the Jets with Herman Edwards, and then the Miami Dolphins back in the aforementioned year of Brady tearing his ACL in 2008. But when could it ever be someone else's turn, huh? Because when Tom goes away, Bill probably goes away as well. He's not going to want to hang around and develop some mediocre quarterback that will never live up to the standards of the greatest quarterback of all time. Can enough ever be enough? I mentioned this earlier when talking about the struggles that the Red Sox have been earlier this year. the city of Boston can't go through enough pain sports-wise. I don't wish bad on any of their people up there. Don't wish any harm, injury, any bad stuff on them. Other than their sports teams, they can't lose enough, especially when it comes to the New England Patriots. And a year where, in all likelihood, at the very minimum, they're going to be back in the AFC title game and possibly even in the Super Bowl. Can enough be enough? Tom, you had 1 year left on your contract. Couldn't you at least give me the hope, the prayer that this was going to be your last year, that you were going to be retiring, instead of ruining it for me before the season even started? I mean, other than the embarrassment with the way the Jets handled the Mike McCagnon firing, I've had a pretty good offseason. And now I got to think about this, the fact that at the bare minimum, I got 3 more years of Tom Brady. I mean, for God's sakes, can it ever end? You realize that if he plays till he's 45, at the very minimum, with him turning 42 and him playing through his age 45 season, and the fact that 3 weeks from Thursday, pay attention to my inner circle here, pay attention, 3 weeks from Thursday, I turned 31 years old. You realize that at the very minimum, he's going to be playing until I'm 34 years old. And I've had to deal with this since I was about 12, 13 years old. I mean, can enough ever be enough? And Tom Brady ever give me the hope that he's just going to one day retire? Please? And let the New York Jets even have a chance to have their run of the middle of things and make me think that the AFC East for even 1 year, is going to be a competitive division. That, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Monday, August 5th, 2019. I hope you all have a great night, a great rest of your week, and I hope by this time next week I've calmed the hell down. Peace.